want to welcome my guest, Gina Cambridge. Gina is an ICF certified travel coach, travel experience host, and the founder of Wanderlust Solo Women Tours and Wanderlust Travel Coaching. She helps women build confidence and connection through purposeful travel experiences and personalized coaching, supporting them as they step into adventures that encourage growth, self trust, and meaningful relationships. Welcome to the show, Gina.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and, share our stories of, empowering women to travel. So, yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be a good topic because we were talking a little bit before we hopped on and just talking about solo travel and rediscovery later in life. Like getting that second wind, I think is super exciting.
Yeah, 100%. I think, for a long time, it was here in the Southern Hemisphere, we call it our OE, overseas experience. I think you in the Northern call it more like your gap year. So there was a lot of emphasis on younger people traveling or doing their big solo adventures. And I think in the last recent years, it's not that. I don't think women have been doing it, but there's definitely a lot more coverage of women later in their life rediscovering their path. And one way of doing that is through travel.
Okay, can you say that again? You said people in the Northern Hemisphere call it what?
Gap, yeah.
Oh, gap.
Sorry.
Got
So
it.
I have I have a
That's
Kiwi
good.
accent. If there's any words that you are not sure, please stop me.
That's what
And
I, yeah,
because there's a couple I know that get lost in translation. So please just let me know. Yeah, GAP.
gotcha. No, that's okay. A funny story that when my husband and I were in London many years ago, and we were sitting at a pub enjoying our fish and chips, and this guy next to me, I don't know, he asked me a question and whatever, striking up conversation. And I look at my husband and was like, I know we're speaking the same language. I have no idea what he just said. It was the strangest thing. I didn't think that was possible, but
It is really funny. And then like, you got Scottish and Irish accents are even worse. So I totally
mhm.
get you. Yeah.
I love that though. It keeps it spicy and
Yeah.
interesting. So I'm guessing women feel like, many women feel like maybe they're too old to start traveling solo. Where do you think that belief comes from? And what would you want those women to hear?
Yeah. I think for many generations, and it is changing, which is really wonderful to see. Um, Once you sort of hit a certain age, women have been seen to be less, I don't know, they're not celebrated as much. We've had our children and, they're like off to school, off to high school or university or left home. Our careers maybe in their twilight years. Um, and, we're not having children or, we're in our 50s or whatever now. So we're not as useful, maybe. I don't know. That was the stereotype that we sort of I think, we were just talking off air about riding off into the sunset, as you age, aging gracefully. But I think it's an opportunity for women to actually really truly rediscover themselves. It's like you have this window now of freedom where you can re-look at yourself and the things that you enjoy. What did you enjoy when you were young? What sparked your interest? What gave you passion? And travel is one of these ways to do that, because I know a lot of women traveled when they were younger and they did some incredible things, and this is back in the age before a lot of technology.
Mm,
So it was even harder than what we know now, and yet they go, oh my God, I don't know if I could do that. And I'm like, you have all the skills. You've raised children, you've run businesses, the skills are there. It's just using them in a different way. And I think that's where it really builds confidence again. And also women going through perimenopause or menopause, one of the things is you lose a lot of confidence in yourself.
mhm,
So again, it's a great tool to sort of regain that back. And I think that's really important.
mhm. And to build on that, how does traveling solo later in life built confidence, especially for women who may not have seen themselves as adventurous before.
Yeah, and I
Those
think that
moms
really, yeah, leads on
have
great from
moms
that.
or have businesses or they've done things before and now.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of women. It's really interesting because they say, "Oh, I don't know how you do it," or "I could never go solo by myself," or "I'd need someone to go with." And I'm like, and I might know a little bit of their backstory. I'm like, "But you did this, and you've done that. You've done amazing things, or you did this when you totally can do it. You have the skills, you have the capability." And I think that it really emphasized again what you are capable of when you're sometimes pushed out of your comfort zone. I know this was definitely my experience because I went, my big solo travel trip was when I turned 40. That's when I sort of started my solo adventures. Um, I was put way out of my comfort zone. There were the things I was doing, I never even in any way, shape, and form thought I could or would be doing. But when you're taken out of your normal, comfortable environment and put into something new, you sink or swim pretty much. And it's quite surprising how often we swim. And I
Mhm.
think just realizing that you've got this, you can do it, your learning and growth is still going. Just because you get to a certain age doesn't mean you need to stop learning or stop growing. And I think that's another wonderful thing it teaches us. And that really helps build your self-confidence and self-esteem. So, I mean, you're going to have the good and the bad, but that's life. Things aren't always sunsets and cocktails, but it builds resilience. And I think that gives you confidence. So, I know it was my story, and I have seen it from other women that it has really helped them to step outside their limitations and revisit who they are, which I think's, an amazing thing to watch.
Mhm. Well, and I think for me, I try to remind myself this is very comforting to know that I'm learning until the day I die. So that
Yeah,
because I used to be stuck in this thing, and every once in a while, I think I slide back into it where I feel like the age I'm at now, why have I not figured this one thing out, or why have I not figured that thing out? And so I remind myself, it's till I die. I'm learning till I die, and so that gives me a lot of grace, and just knowing that it's just I do not have to have everything worked out and planned and even just go take the trip even if I'm feeling nervous or things like that that we can figure it out like you're talking about. And the one thing I underlined here, I was talking about, or I asked you about women who maybe they don't feel like they're adventurous to go
yeah,
take a trip, but maybe too what would help is defining like everybody's idea of adventure is different. That does not mean that you have to like hop on a plane and go safari or something like that. It could be
exactly.
anything.
Yeah, and that I'm so glad you brought it back to that because that is so true. Like one person, I've got a really funny story. One of my local retreats here, one of the activities is pottery making. So
Hmm.
you can think pottery making is a fairly safe activity, not necessarily that adventurous. And I had a younger woman actually come along, and she actually really struggled with it. Um, but this is a woman that could jump out of a plane, that could bungee jump, that could do any wild, crazy thing. So it is 100%, what one person's idea of adrenaline and adventure and excitement is not necessarily another person's view of that. So you're 100, it could be you just take yourself off on a little weekend adventure, in your home where, if you're in the US in your home state or in your home area, you don't have to venture 3,000 miles to make it an adventure. I think it is you work with whatever you feel is right for you. And like I'm definitely not one to be jumping out of things. So that's not my form of adventure, um, but to someone else that is. So yeah, it's totally unique to you and what makes you feel good. I think at the end of the day, do what makes you feel good. I'm not a believer in pushing someone to do something if it's actually really, really, really terrifying and scary to them. I know they say jump out of that plane, it will be exhilarating, and it probably is, and lots of people have done it and it's amazing. I don't really want to jump out of a plane. I'm quite happy where I am. So yeah, working within what you feel makes you feel good, I think is really important.
Yeah, and I like that like you said, it can be near or far. I like doing even like little day adventures where
Yeah.
I'll just plan out all these things I want to hit. And I've told people, oh, for the day I drove, Colorado's really big. We have a lot to do here, so I really don't have to go that far. And told someone that I did this, and they're just like, wow, you like went to XYZ for the day? And I'm like, it was just a day trip for me. That's,
Yeah.
easy peasy. But for some people, that is an adventure just to drive to another town or city or something.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, even if you want to start small like that, it's a great idea.
So you talk about travel as more than just a vacation. How can travel become a time of growth or transformation rather than just a break from everyday life?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think sometimes, and I've done it and it's just coincided with things that are going on in life. And I've had women come on travel experiences without consciously knowing at the time how much they either needed that break or needed that separation from their day-to-day life, just to gain clarity and perspective. I think that's one thing. Removing yourself from a situation so you can sort of look back at it is a really good transformative experience. And again, it can be near or far. It doesn't have to be overseas, but I think sometimes, I think especially as women, we are doing so much. We're running households, we're running businesses, you're either running your kids around, you've got elderly parents you're looking after. There's always something going on, and in that busyness it's really hard to get clarity. And I think that's where, for me, and what I have seen with women, when they step out of that and have space to breathe and to view things a little bit differently, it has been transformative. Not for every single person, and it doesn't mean you're going to have this a big epiphany while you're on an adventure, that's not necessarily going to happen, but it does happen to some people. They come back and go, okay, my job isn't the right job for me. I need to look for something different, or I need to, change my direction in life, or I'm going to put more emphasis on me now, or whatever it is, without guilt too. I think that's a really important thing. Um, I think when we put ourselves first as women, we feel very guilty about doing so. So I think removing that guilt and letting it's okay to look after your own well-being every now and again. And that's, for me, travel has been that tool I use to do that. So I have seen those transformations, and it is a great way to just reflect on stuff. Having a holiday is awesome, don't get me
Mm-hmm.
wrong, but it can be a lot more deeper, and you don't realize till you actually get there what you actually need.
Well, and expanding on that a little bit, many women have spent years, like you said, caring for others, kids and parents. How does solo travel create space for rediscovery and reconnecting with who you are now?
Yeah. And I think we've sort of touched on a little bit, because it's like, what did you used to like to do when you were a child? What was your passion? Did you like art? Were you into biking or hiking? A lot of these, even hobbies that you used to do, maybe you don't have time for, or maybe finding a new one. I've had people try new activities that they'd never done and go, actually, I've actually really enjoy doing this, and gone off and made it part of their day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm.
So I think getting out and trying different stuff gives you that opportunity to rediscover who you are, or who you maybe want to be going forward. And we often lose sight of that again. And it sort of goes back to what I said in the last question, just getting that clarity and perspective of getting back to who we are. Like I said, we're wearing so many hats, which is our actual hat, that's us. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's really, especially later in life, I think this is more relevant, because if you go back to your younger self, of course you're going to change. That's what life's about. You learn and you grow and hopefully get wiser.
Mhm.
but there's still that core of you, the things that make you, give you joy. I think that's one of the things I really love sharing is what gives you joy. And I think just getting back to that very simple thing, and it doesn't have to be anything flash. It could be even just walking in nature. It can be something very simple. So just getting back to the root of that and rediscovering those things and getting that transformation of who you are and what gives you happiness and joy.
Yeah, and it's kind of going back to what you mentioned, like with the pottery class. So,
Yeah.
you take a trip and you find experiences or things you want to visit that are of your interest, which is so much easier to do on solo travel because you're just consulting with party of one. But yeah, if you like art, for example, like I like going to Santa Fe or something like that and like looking at the art and the architecture and it inspires me and I can go at
Yeah.
my own pace. Yeah. And I will bring like my little journal and my markers and doodle while I'm, back in my hotel room or something like that. So I think that's a cool idea that you can look for experiences or things while you're traveling or on your trip and then be able to bring that inspiration or just that
Yeah.
nudge back home.
Yeah, I love architecture too, and I get a lot of inspiration from that as well. Um, and I think that's actually a really good point. What gives you inspiration? And you can take that home, and you don't know where that might lead. Taking that. I think like what you do is going on those little adventures of yours are a great way to find out. You can go on a day tour somewhere, yourself, and there might be events going on or, an art fair or whatever. And then you go and visit that and you find a new art form and you go, oh, that really interests me. And then you can take that home and maybe explore that. So it is a great way to, yeah, navigate and find these new interests.
For someone curious but nervous, what does a supportive first solo trip look like, especially later in life?
Yeah. So again, this ties into everything we've been talking about.
Hmm.
This is going to be unique to you. So for some people, going on and overseas, traveling a few thousand miles to an exotic country, that's going to be fine with them. For others, that's just going to be a step too far. So you got to find what works for you. And I think what you've touched on is doing those day trips. Some people aren't even comfortable being alone. So, like eating alone is a real big thing for some people, just dining alone, having lunch alone. So, for those that are really getting outside of their comfort zones when it comes to solo travel or exploration in any form, I think just getting comfortable in your own company is a really great first step. Go out for lunch with yourself, or go to a day fair and, just walk around the day, do start to do little tiny things. Or I know a lot of cities like have free walking tours, join a free walking tour or a free event that's going on and just start building your suitcase of experiences that way. If it's a real small step, if you're a little bit more confident, maybe you have traveled, but maybe it was with a partner or with friends in the past, but you haven't actually done it by yourself, but you have traveled. Start somewhere, where maybe the language is the same as you or similar, where you can navigate the language, or just the logistics of getting from A to B is a lot easier. And just start small that way, because I think a lot of people get caught up in the logistics
Hmm.
of how am I going to get from my airport? Is someone going to pick me up? I'm nervous to get a taxi or I don't know where the hotel is going to be. I don't know who I'm going to meet. All these things start to create overwhelm. So I think if you break it down, joining small tour groups, up to a maximum of like 15 people or 16 people, I wouldn't go over that because they're nice and intimate. Um, if you've never been in a tour group, I suggest like a shorter one, maybe just like a week, 7 days, because that's just dips your toes in, and get a private room, splash out. And if it's your first solo experience in that, you want to be you want a space to be able to go and recoup and everything. So but I think group tours for someone who's wanting to step into solo travel. I know it's sort of contradictory, but you're still traveling by yourself. It's
Right.
just you have a guide that is showing you everything. So I think it's a great first step for those that have already traveled. And even for those then that want to go on to it, it's a great way. And just do a shorter stint if possible and then build up. Don't but again, everyone's unique. If you want to throw yourself in the deep end, like I did, I took myself off to Egypt. I live in a town of like 7,000 people with no public transport. And my first big solo adventure, I did join a group once I was there, was to Egypt. And it was just totally overwhelming. It was definitely one of those sink or swim moments, but it was amazing and I loved it and I'm so glad I did it. So again, I think what we've touched on, it's very unique to each person, so find what fits for you. But there's some great tips. Just start small. It doesn't have to be elaborate, and then work your way up.
Well, and you mentioned group travel. So, how does group travel or coaching support help women feel more confident stepping into solo or semi-solo travel experiences?
Yeah, I think quite often, for whatever reason, we've found we are traveling solo. So you could have had a partner or a husband or a wife, they've passed away, or you're divorced, you're an empty nester. So you're traveling solo sometimes for reasons out of your control, but you still want to go out there and explore. But you also want company. A lot of people still want some form of company and to share those experiences with. And I think that's where small group tours really come into their own. And there's so many to choose from. Um, so it's getting the right tour that fits you. And I think that's really important. So I'd write down stuff. One, the activities that you're interested in, because there's no point going on a tour that looks at a whole lot of ancient temples when really you want to be doing a food tour. So really get down to the niche of what you want to do and read the reviews, and read stuff about that company. Make sure that they are reputable. Their T's and C's, I think, are really important. This is all just to get you really secure and knowing that you're making the right choice. But I think it's a really good step because you can, especially going to a foreign country where you're not familiar. I always do this. If I just did a group trip actually to Vietnam, I joined a tour there. I've never been to Vietnam before. I don't know the language. I wasn't sure how everything worked. So I went there. I had a few days before, then joined the tour, and then I had a few days at the end. So at the end, I had enough tools that I'd learnt from while I was on the guided tour to help me navigate at the end. So I think it's a great way just to learn about a country because quite often you'll go to a site and unless you've got a guide, you have no idea what you're looking at either. So I
Right.
think it's a great stepping stone. And then now I feel confident I could go back to Vietnam by myself without a tour. So I think it's a great stepping stone. And as far as like travel coaching, it's quite a new thing. Like travel agents and travel advisors. Travel coaching is quite niche and I think new to a lot of people. But I think it's really geared up. And again, different travel coaches have different niches. Some like concentrate on family travel or expat travel or moving abroad. So again, it's finding the one that's right for you. And then I think it's about having support when you feel a lot of overwhelm about the travel experience or you just are time poor. You don't have time to look at every accommodation option and every flight option and itineraries and it's just all a bit too much. I think that's where a travel coach really comes into its own and really delving into the why you want to travel. Going back to that earlier question, what it is you actually want to get out of this experience. Because a lot of us, I don't think, put a lot of thought into the why. Why do we want to have this break? Is it something deeper than what it is? So it's really exploring that so you get the biggest bang for your buck, both physically and emotionally. I think that's really important because you don't want to travel all those miles and, not have a good experience. You want to make the most of it. And I think that's where I call it a wing. I like to call myself a wing woman, where I'm just there to support you every step of the way. Even I have had a lady ring me. She was getting ready to catch her plane. She'd got to the airport. She was traveling to Bali. She'd left all her money cards at home So she had no money at all. She was in such a panic. We talked through it while I was on the phone. She went and it all ended up okay. But I think it's just even having that just support person to be
Mhm.
able to bounce ideas off and talk to is really important.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Something that came to mind as you were talking was it's been kind of a journey with me, my writing and this podcast and the whole idea of just, being nervous and traveling. And for me, it gets easier and easier. But I've really honed in more on maybe what it is that like kind of trips me up, like pre-trip is what it really is for me. Once I'm like on the plane and going, I'm totally fine. I'm ready to
Yeah.
roll. So, journaling definitely has helped. But the question that I wrote down is, why am I nervous? So maybe too, and when you were explaining everything, like, having the outline or having the plan, which is very calming to like kind of know that the unknown is sometimes scary for people. But then maybe
Yeah.
the flip side too is like, why am I nervous? And maybe just like trying to name those things so that you can even plan around that or work through that ahead of the trip, which I think is, I'm just learning more and more about that. But any other thoughts about that?
Oh, you've touched on something. So, like I said, I'm 50, coming up 55. And it's only in the last few years, and it's such a stupid thing to say, realized I have anxiety. I never had a have a name for it. It was just a fit, and it's that same, exactly the same. Once I'm on the plane, I'm fine.
Hmm.
But it's that, and it's funny, in my day-to-day life, I'm a super controller. I love organization. I love lists. But when I'm traveling, I'm a totally different person. And it's
Hmm.
so funny because I'm very much in the now. I only can worry about what's happening then. And that's been, like you said, it's you're forever learning new stuff. And I think just now knowing, okay, those feelings I had were actually anxiety, and going back to what you said, learning how to navigate that. And that's what I've noticed, a lot of the worry and overwhelm and anxiety is that pre-trip lead up. It's
Hmm.
all that worry about that, because there's a lot going on for a lot of people. It's
Right.
not just the trip, they've got to organize their home and
Right.
work and other stuff.
That's
And that
totally
can
me.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, and it can
All
be
the
just
pre-stuff.
like, there's
Yeah.
so much work going on to go and take this holiday. Is it even worth it? you know,
Right.
like you said, just acknowledging that, and whatever works for you, if it's journaling, like you said, or getting someone to support you, like a travel advisor or a travel coach, or just writing things down. I always tell people to break things down into doable chunks. Don't start worry about getting up at the getting picked up at the airport when it's 6 months out from your trip. Just
Hmm.
do what you can and write it down, make a list for that item and tick them off and just work through things. And it sort of just slows things down, just like you said.
Yeah. That's good. And just acknowledging too that everybody travels differently. I think like what you were
Yeah.
saying, just realizing it's like the pre-travel anxiety. So for me, like kind of feeling bad or like something's wrong with me, thinking like my husband will pack maybe 10 minutes before bed the day before a trip. That alone stresses me out. Yeah, but he's just like, what is the big deal? I do this all the time. I would show up to the airport much later than we show up, when you and I go on a trip. That's totally fine. But his brain, he's an engineer and he just manages his thoughts differently. So it's, yeah, deciding what works for you. And especially with solo travel, it's like so much easier. I can show up at the airport whenever I want.
And that's exactly right. And I think all the questions you've asked, I mean, there's a blanket answer, but everything's going to be unique to you. Every experience is going to be unique to you. So it's just working. You can get advice from different people and watch different videos and listen to amazing podcasts like this and get tips. And it's just using all that information and doing what works for you. Because what one person's experience, and I always say this, when someone goes, I'm traveling to, I don't know, Cuba, and I had this experience and it was horrible. And then you'll read the next one. It was like, I went there and it was amazing.
Right.
So one person's experience is not necessarily going to be your experience.
Mm.
So research, take the advice that works for you and then go from there.
Yeah, that's good advice. So, what would you say to a woman listening who feels the pull to travel but keeps telling herself, maybe
Yeah,
someday?
do it. There is never going to be a right time. There's never going to be someone to go with you when it works for you. The money's never going to be there. The time, definitely. You don't know if it's going to be there. And I think this comes to, a lot of things. If there's something you're really passionate about, I don't want to say follow your dreams, even though I do say that, because it's the logistics, the reality is a lot harder. Our finances might not allow it, our circumstances with family obligations may not allow it. But in whatever shape or form you can make it work now, because tomorrow's never guaranteed and we always live with regrets. So don't make it a regret that you didn't go and do it. If you can make it work, it might take a year. Put $5 away a week.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be a big thing if you can afford that. See if you can work around your holiday time. What are can you make the most of public holidays and stuff like that? Set a plan in motion. I think that's the most important thing, and don't put it off.
Yeah, that's good advice. Get excited about a place, like you said, that would bring you joy to go to, not places maybe that other people say you should visit in your
Yeah.
lifetime. Something that's special to you, because I think that is a big motivator, that some place that you've always dreamed of going and maybe having visuals in front of you or just that little reminder, and that'll get you thinking you don't have to wait till someday.
Yeah, and I think visuals are a really great idea, whether that's a vision board or writing it on your calendar, or a really good one is writing it on your mirror, in your bathroom or in your bedroom. I'm going to go here, or this is my dream destination, or something, because then you're seeing that every day. Mine was like to go to Egypt. As a kid, I was fascinated with Egypt. So when an opportunity came for me to go, I grabbed it. And I think that's the other thing. If you get an opportunity, grab it.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, set a plan in motion. Once you've got that, hopefully the universe will come together for you. But make sure, yeah, you set that plan in motion.
So, do you have one last tip for our listeners?
You're never too old and it's never too late to start solo traveling. Don't think you're too old. You're not. I know amazing women traveling in their 80s. You'll
Mm.
meet people from all walks of life. It will expand your um, view and perspective of the world. And I think it gives you great things like empathy and understanding. And just go do it, please, if you can. But yeah, it's a wonderful thing. I know I bang on about it a lot, about the how wonderful solo travel is, but it really is. It's a great exploration into self, not just the world.
Well, that sounds good. Well, where can people connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm on the usual platforms. So Facebook, Wanderlust Solo Women Tours, and on Instagram as Wanderlust Momentum, and also on YouTube as Wanderlust Solo Women Travel Unscripted. And we also have a little Facebook community, which is Wanderlust Solo Women Travel and Women's Empowerment. So Wanderlust is tied up in there everywhere.
Yeah, so for the women who say there's nowhere to connect or get support, all right, we already have you covered in this one episode alone. So I appreciate you coming on and talking with us. And I do love the saying, you're never too old and it's never too late. So go do the thing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Angela. It's been a pleasure being on here, and I hope we've just yeah, ignited one spark in somebody to go and start their journey near or far.
Thank you.